my basic religious background is that I was born and raised into a nominal Christian home. I was baptized as a young infant, 3 months old, 6 months old, something like that, and grew up, most of the time going to church on Sundays, and we that was about the extent of it. I mean, it was a couple hours on Sunday, and it didn't really stretch beyond that. As I said, I was more interested in basketball and sports, and that kind of lasted until I was into my teenage years. I don't know that I would have been able to express that there was a shift with my parents' divorce, especially not at 12. But I did know that over the course of the next few years that I witnessed some things about what was happening that caused me to just kind of swear off marriage and children. But basically the idea was, if that's how marriage is going to go, I don't want to get into that, and I certainly don't want to bring another person, i.e. a child, into that and have them experience the same thing that I had experienced. It wasn't until much later, in my 30s, that I really started to understand and unpack the deep impact that it had on my life at 12, 14, 15, 16, 18 years old. God, for me, at that point in my life, at 12, was a being who was out there somewhere, right? I went to church services, and there was talk of God, there was talk of Jesus Christ, and I could intellect that was true, that he was a real being. I was taught to pray in some sense, and so it wasn't a doubt that God is real. And then, but specifically to answer that question, when you're 12, your whole world is your family, right? And your parents together give you this understanding of God and the stability of God. And again, that's a thing that I know that impacted me deeply, that when that rupture happened, that there was something that went awry in me. And again, I wouldn't have been able to even express this until in my 30s to know that it was something that had happened. I just kind of thought, well, it's pretty normal. Most of the people I knew had parents who were divorced, and it was pretty normal in my world. And then I'm going along, I'm still going to school, I'm found a girlfriend or whatever, and it's the way life was, and so that I come back again and again to the fact that it's only been in much more recent years that I've even come to understand how deep a wound like that can go. Looking back, I can say that I never doubted God's existence, but in that place in my life, there wasn't a whole lot of consistency, intellectually, right? Oh, I believe in God. I believe in, I want to go to heaven. Well, what's the opposite side of that, right? If I believe in God and I'm not living a certain way, what's the outcome, right? And you never really go there, right? At least I didn't. And so the spirituality, I guess you might call it, was a spirituality of the love of the world and the things of the flesh, right? That's that's what was fed to me in high school. That's what was certainly fed to me in college, and I didn't have anybody in my life who could really, in an effective way, call me back to, consistency in what I wanted or said I believed, and say, Derek, you're not doing this well. you're making the wrong choices, you know. Yeah, my parents might have tried to tell me that, but how often do we not listen to our parents because they're our parents, right? So meeting my wife, who is now the woman who is now my wife, had a big impact on this. And at first it was, you know, when we were falling in love and, you know, talking about down the road things like marriage, she started to ask me about religion. She started to ask me, why aren't you going to church on Sundays, you know? And I'd slough it off. Oh, I'd rather go fishing, or I can be a commune with God, you know, on a lake, or whatever I would do. What it really caused me to do, at least initially, was, well, I like this person, I like this girl, and she wants things a certain way, and, you know, I at least, maybe I'll just at least start down this road in order to please her so that we can continue this relationship. And then as I started, you know, thinking in that realm or in that mode, it was reignited in me to really consider ultimate things, which is something I had done a lot in my life up to, you know, maybe the point I was 15 years old, where I spent a lot of time thinking about the afterlife, or I spent a lot of time thinking about how should I live. And so it was that relationship that sort of reawakened that in me. You know, once I experienced just a little bit of truth, it just came like a fire hose, right? That I was glad to be drinking from at that point. But again, it was very intellectual at that point. It was still just in my head, because I had so much time where the things that I believed or thought didn't touch the way that I lived. Everything was practicalities and pragmatism. It's like, what's the net effect of that? Well, this doesn't matter because it can't be proven. Let's stick with the things that can be, and that's I had a lot of that baggage to get rid of, to realize that if I'm thinking something, my actions are going to match, right? And if I'm living a certain way, it's going to lead me to think a certain way too. From that point to walk the sure path into the church came specifically by asking, specific questions about the history of the church and about it all centered around the history of the church. But I had a lot of time to think. And again, these things being reawakened in me, I'm starting to put things together. I was starting to read the Bible. I was starting to read, some of the saints of the church at the same time, and it just hit me that I have to, my actions have to match my words. And it did come even before I came into the church, but of course with a decade plus of baggage and living a certain way, it can take some time to get that, to discard that, or to allow God to take it away. I had a spiritual director who would often say, God doesn't just rip things away from us because he knows us too well. He knows that that could actually do more damage for us in our psyche and our spirit than if he takes it away gently, So I was, I was starting to understand my actions have to match my words. These series of experiences in 2008 in Sydney, Australia really just convicted me that I still wasn't, and I had already been in the church for a few years at that point. I still wasn't living this as well as I thought I was. And I am so grateful for the realization, but then the grace to be coupled with the nudge from the woman I loved who had become my wife, some good people in my path who would help me to understand things more clearly, and ultimately the grace of the sacraments to purify my mind and my spirit, to really understand and to really live in the way that God intends for me.